Welcome back, everybody, into Bill's Chat. I am Josh McCarty. With me tonight, as always, is Luca. Luca, as we record this on Sunday night, we are watching the Chiefs and Giants with about one quarter of action to go. We got to watch an entire day of stress-free NFL football, unless you had money out there, fantasy implications, but no Bills necessary because one of the most beautiful feelings in the sport, Luca, is having your team win on Thursday night and just kicking back and relaxing and watching the rest of the weekend. And boy, did that play out in a big way today as us Bills fans just to watch stress-free upsets happen, not in Buffalo, and enjoying the fact that the Bills are 3-0. How you doing tonight?
Stress free is right. It's one of the ones where, as everyone's aware, I have the guys over. We watch football, things like that in my family room. And it's one of those ones where it's just we were enjoying the array of games that I had spread out through my setup. And main screen was Rams Eagles. Didn't disappoint one bit, especially with that ending. And just other games to enjoy. And as you put it, like the reminder was just, hey, the next game the Bills play is already next Sunday against those Saints that we got to see in the 4 o'clock window, which boy, oh boy, Sam Darnold and those Seahawks really gave it to them. And if you think that the Seahawks are a dominant force thanks to playing the Saints, it's going to be an interesting one watching the good old Josh Allen Bills play that same team. But Sunday was a good one. It was a relaxing one. It's an enjoyable one. As you put it, even from someone that hates Thursday night football, the one thing that's great coming out of it is if you do leave that game with the win, which the Bills have been fortunate to do so a lot of recent, it's a great feeling that leads into the weekend. You're stress-free. You're already one game up, it feels like, on every other team until they get their games finished with. It's always a good football Sunday for the most part, unless you have other teams you like to root out for and they just, for whatever reason, 15 yards of cushion when they're only up 2 and somehow allow a game-winning drive to go down their throats. But I digress. It still was a fantastic football Sunday that was very much, as you put it beautifully, stress-free.
So the way this show is going to go is it's a little bit unique because the Bills game against the Dolphins is a little dated at this point. A lot of you probably got your fix of post game from whether it be WGR or maybe our friends at Cover One or whoever on Friday, Saturday, what have you. So we are going to talk about that game, but it's not going to be an hour-long breakdown of that game. It's going to be a little bit quicker. And then I do want to talk about more big picture stuff like the defense did not perform at the level that we were hoping so far against the Dolphins. So we're going to talk about big picture concerns, if there are, about the Bills. And then Luca and I are going to spin it around the league, the conference, and really just talk about how things look because I do think Luca, when that game ended on Thursday night, despite the fact that the Bills won 31-21, there was a lot of uneasiness in the air. There was a lot of why did the Dolphins keep it so close? Why was this so tough? Why was it that if we didn't get that Seiler blocked punt where he runs into the blocked punt where he runs into the punter, we could have lost the game. And then you watch football today and you see Joe Flacco and the Browns beat the Packers. You see the Eagles escape by the hair on their chinny chin chin with a blocked field goal at the very end. You see the Jets push the Bucks to the limit where they need a field goal at the buzzer to win. And you realize that this is a week to week league. It's hard to win in this league. And some of these teams, like the Browns, like the Jets, like the Dolphins, that came into this week 3, Luca, 0-2, are going to absolutely give you their best shot because they know the statistics that you referenced to me. I don't know if you put it in your actual predictions when you made your Luca's locks, that teams that start 0-3, the mathematic equation of them making the playoffs is so much lower. They know the data and they're going to give you their absolute best shot. The Bills withstood it. The Packers did not. And the other team that and the Bucks were like this far away from having an upset happen. So I think a lot of Bills fans should breathe easier. You got the win, and this time of year, that's really all that matters.
It really, you just have to get over the finish line. You're not going to be sitting there in December as you're one game away from clinching the 1 seed and or 2 seed, whatever it is, and you're in the playoffs and think about, man, remember that Thursday night week 3 game against Miami where they really just they were struggling to separate. They were struggling to dominate. You will not be thinking of that. You know what you will be thinking about? Yet another division win on that record that got you to the place that you are. That's all it is. Wins, losses. Those are the ultimate things that matter in this sport, in any sport. You must win in order to succeed. Simple as that. And it may have not been as pretty as some would have liked. Our prediction show, our preview show, we both picked the Bills to win in an absolute blowout, whatever score we actually ended up putting. I made the comment as well, though, in that prediction where I was even talking about how those divisional games when you are playing against a desperate team, similar for the reasons to like you even laid out, where if they're 0-2 and they understand what 0-3 means, it's going to be a tough battle. You're going to see them. They're going to start digging deeper in that playbook. You made a comment off air before we even went live as the Chiefs game's happening. Andy Reid's on that sideline pissed off, and he's starting to pull out some of those January plays in the playbook. Like, you're going to see that out of these teams when things just continue to not go as well as they like, and they're not getting the results that they want, that they're going to start digging deeper and being more desperate and just attacking with everything they got. And that's just the reality of football. There's the classic cliche, one of the oldest cliches of the sport. That's why they play the game. You have to show up each week. The mentality that the Bills have week in, week out of 1-0. We're looking to go 1-0 this week. That's the kind of mentality you really do need to have when it comes to playing football in the NFL, especially because you don't get, your Alabama hosting Alabama A&M game where it's, hey, the spread is 48.5. Can they cover it? It's like, this is the NFL. That's what makes the spread coming up on the Bills Saints game so crazy that we're in September and the Bills are a 3-score favorite according to Vegas. That's stuff that just never happens in the NFL. That it's, you take your win for what it is. And yes, did it take a little bit of luck when it comes to that roughing the punter penalty that happened that was just perfectly timed? Sure. But realistically, you take your win how it is, and you got to have the mentality of moving on and just looking forward to the next week and taking care of business then and moving on forward, because next thing you know, those games are going to get more difficult, and you have to just have that mentality of understanding what it takes to win. It's not about what does it take to win this game by 28 points? What does it take to win this game in an absolute landslide? What do we need to do to dominate this game? Yes, you want to dominate this game, but you just need to have that ultimate mentality of what is it going to take to win this game, and how can we do this as a unit, as a team, going out there week in, week out, because that's how you end up winning that last game of the season. Something you love to say. There's only one team that likes to fit, or that can finish the season on a win, and the Bills are looking to be that. And it may have not been the prettiest against the Dolphins in some facets of the game, but overall, you got to enjoy it for the win that it is. And we're already on to the following week in week 4.
This Dolphins game felt like several times that the Bills were really going to just run away with it. There was the sequence to me that really kept this game close. It was, God, going back to Thursday now. It was really a 2-play sequence where the Dolphins had back-to-back injuries at cornerback, and they were already really, really thin at cornerback. The Bills had a 7-point lead, and they're driving down, and it's second down, back-to-back injuries at cornerback, and the Bills come out, and instead of spreading the Dolphins out and really trying to take advantage of that, they come out with 3 tight ends or 2 tight ends and a wide receiver and run heavy formation. They get stopped in the backfield. Ultimately, the drive ends in a Matt Prater field goal attempt that goes very wide left. So the Bills go from an opportunity to go up by 2 scores, getting the ball back at halftime, to 2 touchdowns, to then also maybe 10 points, to now the Dolphins get the ball back and they go on a absolutely methodical drive where it felt like every time they had a 3rd and long, they were making magic happen. The Bills were not in a good position to get it. They go into halftime tied up instead of the Bills being up by 2 scores. And, to me, I never felt overly threatened by the Dolphins in this game until the moment that the Dolphins stopped the Bills when it was tied late and the Dolphins roughed the punter. Right up until that roughing, I'm like, "Oh god, they're gonna be in good shape here." I will also say leading up to Russell Wilson. Leading up to the Terrell Bernard interception, Luca, there was a point in this game, and I'm
Yeah.
distracted by Malik Neighbors being hurt on my screen right now. There was a point in this game where my thought was, because the Dolphins were driving down, I was having deja vu from the end of the first half. Dolphins are driving down, I'm thinking the worst case scenario here is that the Dolphins score with like 30 seconds left and they go for two. Because that now you're really like now we're all clinching and watching this game. Was that going through your head at all thinking there? Did you feel confident that that Bills defense that we saw on Thursday was gonna make a stop?
No, no, not at all. That was going through my head. I share a thought with you. It was, you know, you don't know what McDaniel ultimately would have done, but at the same time, you wouldn't blame him. And if you were in that position, that's absolutely what you should be doing in that case. You know, you're a heavy dog on the road in a must-win game for you and your job. It felt like going into it, and you have an opportunity to win thanks to a 2-point conversion at that moment. Like any respectable coach, any respectable person would sell their soul for that kind of position on the road in Buffalo in this current, in this current climate that we are in the NFL. So it it didn't feel as if the defense at all could kind of step in, make the big play that they need to, and close out the game as they should. So as you pointed out, they're they're moving down the field, and they're doing it as in the fashion of which they did the entire game. And someone even made a comment where it's like our pass rush really just doesn't feel like it's getting there. And I kind of even replied, I'm like, it's hard for the pass rush to get there in 1.5 seconds because that's just how fast it felt like the ball was coming out of Tua's hands 9 out of every 10 passes. And that was in my, from what I imagine by design, of course, just in and out, get it to your playmakers in space, just move and blah, blah, blah. Like methodically do that, extend the run game through quick passing, do all of the little things you need to do to just be efficient, move the chains and control the game to the best of your abilities so that you can keep Josh Allen and the Bills off the field while also maximizing your opportunities. And that drive in which Tua throws the pick, it just never felt like there was anything that was going to come of that positively from the Bills. And as you said, it was more of how much time is going to be on the left on the clock when the Dolphins feel like they're going to score here. I mean, hopefully we get a fourth down stop somewhere in here because it did feel like the Dolphins were at least having to fight for everything they were getting. But I didn't feel as confident that the stop would come in the manner that it did. And I wasn't confident at all when it comes to the Bills defense being able to finally step up and make a play based on how that entire game before it kind of was taking place and what we all saw that just wasn't a defense clicking on all three levels and making things happen.
I was very disappointed in the pass rush this game. And in the past, we had seen a lot of, okay, well, we're playing the Dolphins. We know that our Tua likes to get rid of the ball so quickly that you're not going to necessarily get sacks. But this year, he's been holding onto the ball longer. And this game, particular, Joe Marino pointed out, was his second longest time to throw, I think, in the last 16 year or 16 games or calendar year, something like to the point where he held onto the ball a long time this game. Now, some of that is because of some of the broken plays where he scrambled around and found somebody open. That does bake into that time, but there wasn't a lot of like 1-2 boom. It was just I didn't think that the Bills pass rush necessarily did what I thought they could do to a very undermanned offensive line by the Dolphins. My first thought when this game ended, Luca, was Gregory Rousseau, Joey Bosa, AJ Epinesa, and the guys on the edge. Did you have a certain, I know we're going to do game ball and game check, but did you have a certain area of the defense that you came away most annoyed with?
Oh, I mean, Trey, the half of the, how do I put this? I'm not trying to, I guess I am trying to single out Trey White. Trey White just, I'm getting very thin in my patience with Trey White being out there as CB2 in the boundary. It's his better years are behind him. That's not breaking news to anyone and stuff like that. But the play that stands out to me, of course, is on the 2 against Waddle, playing 4 yards of cushion and not even breaking on the quick slant and the quick in, whatever it was. I believe it was a slant. It kind of had that feel to it. But regardless, just the quick breaking route that Waddle took to keep the inside leverage, easy touchdown. I mean, Trey White just wanted no business of being anyone that could get beat on a double move behind him, even though it was at the 2-yard line and you have the back of the end zone behind you. Like, I, I don't. Your value to this team at this moment in time really is just kind of your veteran savviness, your great willing tackler. We've seen it through a couple weeks that he still has the ability to step up and make tackles on the outside. Like that is still there. You don't need game breaking speed in order to achieve that, but it's something about him in the inability or the overly cautious way of just making sure everything's in front of him, but you're also just handing so much space to any receiver in front of you, even when it's not necessary and you're not willing to jam up whatever it is in that moment of time. It's like, what good are you at this moment in time? I'd rather see a Dorian Strong out there. I'd rather see someone else that could potentially provide something different and at least a little bit more athletic. And I'm not trying to sit here and bash Trey White because, of course, of who he has been for this team. And he's been a loyal servant under McDermott and all of these things, but he's not the guy that he once was. And it was another game, clear as day, where you just saw play after play. And at a point where Miami just felt like they were locating where Trey White was and attacked that side because you understood with some sort of underneath route in any variety, there was going to be cushion. There was going to be space. You weren't going to have to worry about Trey kind of jumping anything or being on top on the hip of anyone because he was just so concerned about what was going on behind him to the point where he was willing to sacrifice 2-3 yards of space in front of him. I love the guy, loved the player that he was. This was just another example of a game where I look forward to Hairston coming back, hopefully healthy soon. I would rather see Dorian Strong out there in a much more prominent role. Just something else needs to be out there than what that is at CB2. It's not good enough. It'll be fine against the Dolphins and the Saints because you can get by everywhere else. But I mean, even against the Dolphins, of course, we saw what we did. It's like, you're not going to be able to survive with that night in, night out, week in, week out, and be able to make the push that you ultimately want to. Oh my God, Cam Scatterwood just hurt a defensive end in the NFL. I mean,
Did I see Neighbors come back in? Looks like
I'm not sure on that
it.
either, but oh my God, sorry, Cam
No,
Scatterwood.
it's okay. Trey White, we've talked about him before. I make this comparison, and I don't mean it disrespectfully because I think Tre'Davious White has an argument for being a future Wall of Famer, and I don't think Damar Hamlin is that at all. But I think he is Damar Hamlin at this point in the sense that we know what he is. I would much rather go through the growing pains of seeing a Cole Bishop out there learning every week that the goal is by the time January rolls around, an experienced version of Cole Bishop who has taken his regular season lumps is going to be a better option for the Bills at safety than the limited option we have already in Damar Hamlin that has proven to be an athletic liability out there. That is what I think that this version of 2025 Tre'Davious White post 2 serious knee injuries is giving the Bills. He's a limited version of himself. If the 2019 version of Tre'Davious White was on this roster, this wouldn't be a conversation.
Yeah.
Max Harrison wouldn't have been a draft pick. We would be just fine. But that is not the case anymore. And I hear everybody, and I even heard Joe Marino say this, and I respect his opinion, but he's like, Trey White is just not athletically going to keep up with a Jalen Waddle in space. That's a tough ask. There's not a lot of cornerbacks that can do that. I hear that. My thing is, I don't think it's that simple. Trey White, to your point, has to play so far back because he is so afraid of giving up the big play that it gives them extra space. Like, why doesn't Jalen Waddle and Tyreek Hill just have 200 catches every year if it's that simple?
Yeah.
There is more to it than that. And that's where I get that we want to see Max Harrison come back. But also, there is an option on the team in Dorian Strong, who is a very good athlete that I thought held up well for himself, that if you're not going to play him over Trey White, why not rotate him in so he can get experience too? You never know if he could end up being something. But right now, this Tre'Davious White thing where he's playing every snap on defense, I'm hoping it goes away when Harrison comes back. I'm bracing for it not. And I think that would be a catastrophic mistake. I think it would be an organizational failure, Luca, to make it to January, and unless it's injury related, have no idea what you have in Max Harrison or Dorian Strong, and be having Tre'Davious White lining up on Bateman or White lining up on Worthy in important spots for this team. I think you're asking for a disaster. Let's talk about the offense. It was a very good Kincaid game. He gets a lot of credit for his blocking in this game, and I echo that. I thought Kincaid is starting to really come along as a blocker. He's never going to be George Kittle, Lee Smith. He's not going to be that guy, but I think he's at least effective as a blocker, which is what the Bills need in this offense. Jackson Hawes, by the way, holy cow! I mean,
Ooh.
just an absolute stallion out there blocking, and has a touchdown now on Josh Allen just getting bored and flipping it to him. But I thought overall this was a really strong Kincaid game, both from the blocking standpoint, and he was an eyelash away from having 2 touchdowns, really 3 on the screen pass on the first drive of the second half. I was actually mad at him when I thought he dropped the touchdown pass, the second one. Then they go back and show the replay, and it was just a fantastic play by Ashton Davis, the Jets safety, to break it up at the last minute. But what you see with Kincaid is, even on that play, the separation he's able to get to where you force a safety like Davis, who's a great athlete, to have to make the perfect play to stop him. Kincaid's good in the open field. It feels like, Luca, to me, the Bills are finally starting to realize how to use his skill set. But the other piece of this is something you and I have been harping on since he was drafted. It looks great to have this great receiver, but if he can't block, defenses are going to treat him like a receiver. He's just a big slot. Now that he's adding blocking into the mix, he'll be covered by safeties. He'll be covered by linebackers. He'll put defenses in a bind. Until then, you just put a big cornerback on him and you take your chances, and he turns out to be Kyle Pitts. But now that he's adding the blocking to his game, it is only going to open up his ability as a receiver. And when you look around this receiving group for the Bills, I think it still comes down to Kincaid or Coleman. One of these guys has to become a blue chipper in this offense this year for this team to get where it wants to get to. And right now, I don't think Kincaid's considered like one of the best tight ends in the league, but I love the ascension he's on.
I Kincaid's Kincaid's development as a true tight end in this league is something that's already very visible and apparent 3 weeks through the season. It was highlighted in this game as his ability in 3 tight end sets to be an adequate blocker. And I'm going to say adequate because that's all you really need a guy like Kincaid to be. As you mentioned, he just needs to show he has that ability. You don't need him to be Lee Smith or just an elite blocking tight end. Good news. 85 on the Bills. Good old Jackson Hawes is that elite blocking tight end. He is the number 1 blocking tight end in this league, even as a rookie through 3 weeks. It's crazy. So now you have Kincaid just lost in that mix, quote unquote. And I say lost in that mix because that's what he is, or is becoming, it feels like, to a defense where he is just part of the package. And then all of a sudden you're like, oh shit, here's this supreme athlete at tight end that's now slipping into space, getting open, becoming a dynamic receiver. And you brought up the fact that it's like, it feels as if the Bills are starting to truly understand what Dalton Kincaid can be for this offense and what they need him to be and how to get that out of him. But it also feels, to the credit of Kincaid, to be honest, it feels like we finally have a healthy NFL ready Kincaid here early on in season 3. Season 2, it came out that maybe he just wasn't at 100% for a large portion of the season. And season 1, of course, was, is season 1. It was his rookie year. You're still adjusting and acclimating to the NFL speed and level. And you just saw those things in flashes that made you feel promise when it comes to what he can be for this team. So I love that we're seeing that development finally flourish a little bit more in consistency when it comes to his season 3 early on. So I love the Dalton Kincaid development because the Bills are a team that we've been asking for, especially when you saw the likes of a Khalil Shakir leave early in the season last year. It's like we just need a dynamic weapon or two in addition to that. James Cook, of course, out of the backfield has his own dynamic abilities as a running back for this team, both in the passing and running game. But you just needed a little bit of a threat in the receiving game. You don't need a true dominant dog necessarily as a wide receiver one, but you just need a complement somewhere else. And it just has that sense that Kincaid may finally have that ability, as long as he can continue to be healthy, to be that secondary threat for the receiving game with this Bills team. And then everyone else can kind of trickle in where they are. You have, of course, still Shakir, the trusty go-to guy for Allen, although the last couple of weeks he hasn't even truly needed to, because you've had other people stepping up in that time. And Kincaid, who's quickly becoming Mr. Thursday Night Football for this team and in the NFL, has another big night on Thursday night against the Dolphins to kind of really help this offense be efficient and go down the field with ease. And I mean, Allen, it was as efficient as he could be, 22 of 28, and a large portion of that was thanks to Dalton Kincaid.
So before we start spinning it around the league, we will do game balls and game checks. I want to talk to you about the Bills defense. That was a talking point after this game. I think there's two approaches you can have. First approach, doesn't look a lot better to me. The Dolphins went up and down the field on them. The Ravens certainly went up and down the field on them. And it's scary because now a lot of fans, rightfully so, have PTSD to when this team gets into big spots in the playoffs against good quarterbacks. They cannot make a stop. And the other side of the coin is, if you want to have glass half full, you could say to yourself, well, a lot of their investments made this offseason were rookies. You had a second round pick in TJ Sanders. You had a third round pick in Landon Jackson. You had a fourth round pick in Deion Walker. You had two defensive linemen in Michael Hoyt and Larry Ogunjobi, who aren't even going to be active until week 7. And then you had obviously Joey Bosa. So you have three rookies who are still very much developing, and you're hoping that it's only going to get better for them. You have two guys in Hoyt and Ogunjobi who are going to come back by week 7. You have two guys that I think we can call stars, Ed Oliver and Matt Milano, who are not playing right now, who are coming back. There's rumors that Greg Rousseau is playing with a little bit of a leg issue, and maybe that's hurting some of his explosiveness. So that should get better. Continued improvement from a guy like Cole Bishop, that should get better. So, and obviously your first round pick, Max Harrison, is going to come back soon. And so there are enough names out there that you can get excited about, like, oh, a first round pick corner. Oh, two free agents in Hoyt and Ogunjobi. Three rookies on the line that are going to play and get better as the season goes on. Bishop's going to play and get better. Where do you stand? Do you look at this and say, there's a ceiling on this defense? I'm not sure it can ever be great, but maybe hopefully they can try to be good. Or are you just like, I don't know, I still don't have a clue what we have here. I'll know more in a couple months.
The ceiling, or another word for it, potential of this defense is there, where I'm not going to believe that they're ever going to be a top 5, top 8 defense in this league, but they absolutely can be, I'll just call it, good enough to get this Bills team over the line in the moments that they need to and get things done, because the players and the pieces that you mentioned that may not be there at all right now, and or are rookies and are just looking to develop and continue to progress, hopefully. And hopefully, I feel, is a key word in this, where it's like rookies are, I mean, Cole Bishop is kind of a rookie. Of course, he's not officially, but he really is as a starter for sure. You need them to get snaps. You need them to get live reps in order to continue to be more and more comfortable. And I think, like, Deion Walker had a, whatever performance, in my opinion, of course, in his small role, week 1. I think in week 2, you had, I didn't really stand out, but then week 3, Deion Walker, I think in this Miami game, had a couple big splashes where you're like, okay, he's starting to figure things out, and or it was just a good spot for him. And that's the kind of thing you need in these rotational players, especially from the rookies. Just come up in flashes when you can, when you find these matchups, whatever it is that are working for you. So I like the idea. I'm I am more on the side of optimism with that potential, though. I will just put it that way. I don't believe that this defense is truly doom and gloom in what we're seeing right now. I think they're better than the unit we're seeing being put out there these first few weeks, but it is just potential and optimism when it comes to the ceiling of what it is. And I believe that I get excited about like Michael Hoyt coming back because what we saw in flashes from him in the preseason felt like it could be potentially something nice. And there was clearly an idea when you bring in a guy like him through free agency of what he can be at that edge presence in that defensive line rotation that it feels like could be a better rotational piece than what's currently in place because a guy like AJ Epinesa just continues to not really cut it for me and cut it for us when it comes to what we need him to do. So you need a couple guys in those spots that can maybe influence the game a little bit differently in a positive way that you're just not getting out of the same old guys like an AJ Epinesa that's the one individual just to call out one that feels like potentially would be nice to come through once his suspension ends.
I like the Hoyt point. I hate to say this, but I really just think because he gets Epinesa out of there. I feel like we kind of know what Epinesa is at this point, and it's
Yeah.
just not an impactful player. I also, in kind of excited for Ogunjobi. Not that I think he's any kind of a difference making player, but a lot is being asked of these rookie defensive tackles right now, and I think getting Ed Oliver back and Ogunjobi will give them a chance to kind of breathe and take it all in and maybe see it at more of an appropriate pace for them. All right, Luca, let's get game balls and game checks out of the way here. Who gets your game ball for the Bills' 31-21 victory over the Miami Dolphins?
We talked about him a little bit already, and it has to be Jackson Haas. No, it's Dalton Kincaid. Dalton Kincaid absolutely showed up. And you know what I like about Dalton Kincaid showing up in this particular moment is we had our pregame show, and a lot of individuals in our chat were talking about how they expected big things. It felt like people were expecting and hoping for Dalton Kincaid to have a big game going into that. And that feels like in a spot previously you wouldn't necessarily see Kincaid come out as much as you would have liked in the previous couple seasons. And this feels like one where it was an opportunity for him to shine, and he did. He did everything he was asked of. He did it at a high level. He, of course, had the one touchdown. Could have even had more with how good of a game he was having that I believe he absolutely deserves the props when it comes to a game ball. So Dalton Kincaid gets my game ball.
It's a good pick. I think I'm really excited to see what happens with Dalton Kincaid. I'm gonna go with Terrell Bernard. It is one play, but it was a massive play. I felt like the game could be getting away from the Bills. I thought his read he made on that play was perfect. I thought Dan Orlovsky did a great job breaking that play down and talking about how Babbage put Bernard in great position on that play based on what the play was asking for him to do. But a great read by him. He's had a nose for a big play in big spots, and that's what we've come to expect with Terrell Bernard. He's not that 250-pound middle linebacker that's really going to blow up the run or be super physical out there, but he has a nose for the football, and boy, did the Bills need it. So you make a play like that, you intercept the ball to really change the game. You get my game ball. Luca, who gets your game check?
My game check's Ray Davis. It's surprisingly not someone on the defensive side of the ball, although it absolutely could have been a couple individuals I can think of. But Ray Davis is he's just been really underwhelming and disappointing so far. And it's limited opportunities, and you're stuck behind James Cook as an absolute primary back and option for them in the backfield. So there is that variable in this. But I just feel like even when Ray Davis is called upon, what are you getting out of him that you don't get out of Ty Johnson? And it feels like there's a little bit more of a trust factor in Ty Johnson. That's why you see, if you look at the listed carries, you don't even see Ray Davis as a rusher in the official box score. And then on the official box score as well in the receiving category, he just had a singular target for Ray Davis, whereas Ty Johnson had a couple. It's just when you're being passed by an individual that on the unofficial depth chart is behind you, it's a disappointing thing, especially for someone that's as young and seemed as promising as he was in his rookie season as Ray Davis. So unfortunately for this one, yeah, he gets my game check.
That's a good one. I put out a tweet from our podcast account the day after the game. There's been a major shift in the Bills running back carry distribution. from last season to this season. In 2024, James Cook, as far as running back carries go, had 57% of the carries. He was 207. Ray Davis was 113. Then Ty Johnson had 41. And James Cook was 12.9 attempts per game. So far this season, through 3 games, he's 17.7 attempts per game. He's got 76% of the carries, up from 57 last year. And all of that has come from Ray Davis. Last year, Ray Davis had 113 carries to Cook's 207. So a little more than half of the amount of carries of Cook. This year, he's got less than one fifth. 53 carries for Cook, 10 for Davis. It's been a complete phase out, or maybe more appropriately saying leaning into Cook as the bell cow. You and I have been saying he's a special player, and we don't just say that about running backs lightly. You have to be a special running back to say that. He is a special player. Ray Davis has not shown that. And the Bills are leaning into Cook at this point, and that's come at the expense of a player like a Ray Davis. I'm going to go with Gregory Rousseau. I have heard that some folks that have gone back and watched the game, I know Ryan Talbot said this, that he had a good game, at least somewhat better than it came off on the TV copy. But unfortunately, in that situation, when it felt like the Bills were getting zero pressure, this might be a cumulative reward for Greg Rousseau, who the first 3 games of the season has been very quiet. I'm ready to see more out of Greg Rousseau. He got the big contract extension in the offseason. I've been a big believer in his talent and his skill set, but so far, at least through 3 games, he's left me underwhelming. All right, Luca, let's spin it around the league here. Let's start in the AFC, and we can go to the AFC East because holy cow, do we just want to print off the division championship banners tonight? I think this is a wrap. The Jets are 0-3, right? The Dolphins are
Yes.
0-3, and
Yes.
the only win the Patriots have is on the road when they were playing either the Jets or the Dolphins, when they beat the Dolphins in Miami on a last-second miracle. They lost again today to a mediocre team at home, the Steelers. The we thought coming in this division might be pretty easy, and through 3 weeks, nothing is changing my mind, as the Bills are already 2-0 in the division, by the way.
Yeah, the one caveat I would give to it is the Patriots really just beat themselves. That is the one thing. It's a team that's still trying to figure out or regain that winning way. And when you have Ramondre Stevenson fumbling at the 1 and turning it over in the end zone, he had another fumble earlier. Other missed opportunities for the Patriots in a game that ultimately saw the Steelers score late to win it. That's the Patriots have to be absolutely disgusted with losing that home game. That's all I'll say on that. That's one that I came away after watching that thinking the Patriots lost this. This was not the Steelers winning this. I mean, the Steelers did end up making that drive to win, but truly that's one that the Patriots should have been able to walk away with a win when you really look at it, it feels like. So, but the Jets, I mean, you mentioned it earlier. The Bucks had a scare with the Jets. How crazy. It feels like it's been a long time, Josh, that in the league we've had numerous in one day, numerous blocked field goals, and then even a pair of them get run back for a touchdown. That's exactly how the Jets almost beat the Buccaneers. Buccaneers are lining up for a field goal to take a 2-score lead and hopefully, quote unquote, ice the game. And in turn, what happens is that field goal attempt gets blocked and housed right on them. Good news for the Buccaneers. They have good old Baker Mayfield, and he, even without Mike Evans, makes a game-winning drive down the field to have another field goal attempt, which, mind you, was very close to being blocked once again. But it does go through the uprights. The Buccaneers win. You highlighted it. The Jets are 0-3. And then, of course, we know the Dolphins lost. So it does kind of print. Oh, my God, Russell. Print the division win banners now. It is almost to that point, and it's crazy to think that it's only we're recording right now. It's September 21st, and it feels like the Bills are taking the division in a runaway. The Bills and the Buccaneers, for that matter, are 2 teams in the NFL that are running away with their respective divisions.
Yeah, and I might even throw the Eagles in that. I know the Commanders are 2-1, but it just feels like it feels like, with the Daniels injury, it's gonna be hard for them to catch up to that. Um the Ravens are obviously a wagon. They're 1-1. They have a tough game on Monday, and then they go to Kansas City next week. So we'll know a lot more about the Ravens here in about the next 7 days. But I fully expect them to be in this fight for the long run. But also, when you look at what happened with the Bengals today, it does not look like Jake Browning is going to be the one to keep them in this race as they got their doors blown off in Minnesota. We'll talk about the NFC here in a little bit. Who else in the NFC? We're going to go ahead and give the Chiefs this win tonight. They're going to be 1-2 with a showdown with the Ravens. I know this game's still going on, but that's me projecting like it's election night. We're going to go ahead and project that the Chiefs get this win. I still think the Chiefs are a team to be reckoned with. Obviously, Patrick Mahomes is that guy. Their offense looks like it's in shambles right now, but they are going to get back to electric receivers in Rashee Rice and Worthy. So we'll see what Russell Wilson. Holy, I just saw what you saw.
The intentional grounding.
My God. I mean, on that might be a first. I've never seen that called in the NFL where you throw it out of the back of the end zone and you get called for that. Anyway, I still am putting the Chiefs in my scare level. I mean, they're not going away anytime soon, but what do you do with the Chargers, Luca? Are you ready to put them into the same grouping as Chiefs/Ravens as teams that we're watching every week starting to be like, oh, you're kind of interesting? Or are they still a notch below?
They're so close. They're not quite there, but they're very close. One thing that happened for them that you never want to see a player hurt and things like that, but I think they got a bump where Najee Harris being out and now them just really having to lean onto Amari and Hampton as much as possible. That could pay
We are recording, Luca.
Oh my God. I cannot believe what I just saw on 4th and goal.
He threw it away on 4th and goal. This is incredible.
Sorry, we are recording. The Chargers. Come on, Dable. You got to bench him. You got to do it, man. Oh my God. Okay. The Chargers are going to have a little bit of a bump in the backfield with Amari and Hampton. I think that will happen. They're going to have to lean into him at this point in time due to the unfortunate injury that happened to Najee Harris, but that may pay it dividends in the long run. Justin Herbert still just got a few, what the fuck throws in him. Just a few if you can just clean those up, I mean, and they're not even necessarily intercepted, but it feels like they will be eventually intercepted or things of that nature where it's like, what are you seeing there? Like, I don't understand why you're throwing that ball and it's stalling drives due to it. Things of that nature. Like, he's still got those in his bag that he just needs to clean up and just get it sorted. If he can do that, and Quentin Johnston, I mean, talk about a phoenix rise from the ashes that was his rookie year. Quentin Johnston being a thing now all of a sudden is not something I had on my bingo card just because of how low it felt like it got during his rookie season with the drops and just inability to be a big playmaker. They have the pieces, they have the ability. It's can they just be consistent? And it even just feels like something that it's going to be hard to get my head around because the Chargers are that team where it's like the Chargers will charger. There is that aspect to it, but I do think they are very close to finally getting over that. And, you had people saying, well, they haven't had a big win yet. It's like, well, week 1, they did beat the Chiefs. Now the Chiefs are starting to look lesser than a massive win, but it's still Patrick Mahomes, Andy Reid, and the Chiefs. And then this Broncos win, all due respect, was a quality win for them. I mean, that's a divisional win, of course. And think the Chargers right now are in a very good driver's seat for the AFC West, a very difficult division that is seeing the Raiders at 1-2. The Chiefs are about to become 1-2, and the Broncos are 1-2. I mean, they have a good foothold on the AFC West early right now because 2 of those wins as well are at the hand of the Chiefs
3.
and the Broncos. Oh, right. Oh my God. I forgot that the Raiders were week 2. Holy shit. Yes. Wow. That is just playing 3 divisional games is also just a crazy situation right out the gate, but I digress. It is an incredible position that they aren't in. if you are someone that believes the Chiefs will win this division, it's going to be a long road ahead. There's just that piece in me that is like, the Chiefs are going to win this division, right? Like, that's going to happen. It has to happen. It's Patrick Mahomes, it's Andy Reid, blah, 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 blah. But the Chargers are absolutely going to be fighting down to the wire now at this point in time, it feels like. And at some point, that switch will flip, Josh, where I believe them to be close but not quite there. It will take over. It does feel like, give me a few more weeks of what we're seeing overall, or if not even improve, and I will probably finally see the light when it comes to the Chargers being a legitimate, contender and problem in the AFC moving forward.
There's a great tweet out there, and I wish I could find who sent it to give it credit, but the Chargers signed Najee Harris, and he hasn't been a great player in his career, but he's been very durable. And they're like, the Chargers signed a guy who hasn't missed a game in like 5 years, and within 3 games of being on the team, he's almost lost an eye and he lost an Achilles. It's like, wow. That really puts it in perspective. All right, the other team in the AFC that I mean, they're not there yet, but the Colts are kind of a wagon. They're not ready to print off their division banners yet, but I thought this was kind of a trap game for the Colts. To me, they're the kind of team that historically, at least since really since Andrew Luck retired, they have a history of looking good at times and then going on the road and laying an absolute egg against a bad team. And this was a spot I needed to see them get through. And boy, did they get through it today with a massive win over an inferior Titans team. Luka, Daniel Jones, he's got all the athletic attributes. That's what got him drafted so high. That and his connection to the Mannings that the Giants liked. But there's this isn't just we had no other ideas with Daniel Jones. There's an interesting player in there that if they can tap into, correct some of the bad habits that he developed in New York and kind of rebuild him from the ground up, they might have an answer here at quarterback, short or long term. And you said something to me interesting prior to us going live that you think his ceiling is potentially like middle of the pack starter in the NFL, which would be great for them. This is a fascinating story and something that we both believe this Colts roster is otherwise pretty loaded outside of the quarterback. And if they just get baseline level quarterback play, out of Daniel Jones, they're going to make the playoffs. They're going to win this division because the Texans can't get out of their own way. They have no offensive line, and Stroud is regressing faster than you can even believe. And the Jaguars, despite winning today, just watch them, and they try everything they can do to give games away. That Trevor Lawrence is not the guy. This Colts team, I think, barring injury to Jones, who'd have thought that, is going to be in the playoffs, and I don't think they'll be an easy out.
1000%. I think the biggest issue that a lot of individuals may have just with Daniel Jones is the fact that they can't get the late stretch of him on the Giants out of their head. And what I always say to that is, it's a valid thing to remember, but you also have to just take in the factors and variables of just what the Giants have been for a while, as well as just how things operated, the dark cloud that was over them all of last season, letting Saquon Barkley go for free to a division rival and thrive on the Eagles. And anyone that believed it was Daniel Jones that led them to the playoffs and the playoff win with Saquon Barkley in that backfield, I believe is foolish. And I don't think anyone in the Giants organization truly believed that. That's worth their grain of salt, or anything. But it's just one of those things where sometimes environments and situations are just bad for certain individuals, and they truly do need that fresh start. And they just need to go somewhere with a team that's more patient and understanding and just has a different culture that fits the guy who's under center for you a little bit better. And Daniel Jones feels like the type of guy where New York just was not a good fit in any capacity. And yet a little bit of time away now, coming to Shane Steichen, who's absolutely a somebody. He's not your Kevin O'Connell, but he's not a nobody at all. Getting him in house, they had their own problems last season that have been called out publicly by big figureheads in the NFL landscape. They made some moves and decisions in the offseason that are trying to correct it. they're an ownership group. And I say that, of course, because, Irsay passed away during the offseason as well. But even the ones that are now owning and leading the way with the Colts, it's all about football there. And they're trying to move forward in a more positive direction, a football first focus. And you get a guy like Daniel Jones, who does have intangibles and physical assets and things about his game that, as long as you can peel back that bad habit layer and all the bad juju that's around him, and as you put it perfectly, rebuild it from there could be a little gem in there. When you're not going to get a top 8 quarterback out of Daniel Jones. That's just not going to happen. But if you can get a top 14 guy, like a 14th best, 13th best, 15th best quarterback in this league, you look at the team around him, both defensively and offensively, that's really all you need for the Colts to succeed. When you get to the games that start mattering, we talk about it even with the Bills. You need a little bit of luck in order to get through some of these things. You're not going to win just purely based on skill and talent alone. You need a bounce or two to go your way. You need some calls to go your way. You need a couple good spots of the ball to go your way. That has to happen in order to succeed through the playoffs and the games that matter the most. You got to first get into the dance. And as long as Daniel Jones can be as efficient as he has been at right now through the remainder of the season, the Colts will absolutely play a factor in the AFC landscape. And they're clearly looking to dominate the AFC South as it is. So it's one where, looking ahead too, if you want to truly understand, and I think this will be an eye-opening one, or at least a true test for everyone that still is not necessarily sold on the Colts, they're visiting the LA Rams next week, Josh. Ooh. That will be one that will absolutely probably show us who the Colts truly are and what they will be as a factor going down the line.
Let's talk about the Rams, because I think if you're somebody, I'm guilty of it too. You turn on First Take and you see Stephen A's A-list, or you turn on PFT and you see Mike Florio go through his power rankings with Chris Sims. If you look at a list of NFC power rankings this week, I want you to all keep something in mind. There were 3 field goal attempts that were either blocked or almost blocked that completely shape how the NFC is going to be viewed after this week. You had a block in Philadelphia that won the game for the Eagles and actually covered the spread. Holy cow. You had a block in Cleveland that gave the Packers a loss, and you had a near block in Tampa Bay that would have given the Jets a win after the Jets blocked a kick and got themselves back in the game. And you're talking about Packers, Rams, Eagles, and Bucks, maybe the 4 best teams considered in the NFC right now. Maybe not even maybe. Those are the 4 best teams because all the injuries going on in San Francisco. All could have easily flipped wins or losses based on a block or a non-block on special teams. So just take power rankings with a grain of salt. It's a game of inches. I was very impressed with the Rams today, Luka. I was as impressed with a team that as you can be that lost a game as I could be with the Rams, because I was not overly sold on them. But the way that they came out and punched Philly in the mouth, the way that Devontae Adams still looks like one of the better receivers in the league, and Puka Nacua, when they need a play, he is unguardable. I can't remember the last time I saw a receiver like that, where it almost reminds me of going back and watching Antonio Brown when he was going with Ben Roethlisberger.
Yeah.
I don't want to put that's a lot to put on Puka, but Puka has been that good. It's like they know where the ball's going and they can't stop it. Or even Devontae in his prime with Aaron Rodgers. He is unguardable. And it felt like they were the better team today. NFC wise, we know how the results went. Do you think there's one team that stands out above the rest in the NFC? Because I had gone into this week still thinking Philadelphia was a level above. I probably would put them 1 in my power rankings because I view the power rankings through a Bills lens as far as how I think teams match up with the Bills. And I would still, like, if the Bills made it to the Super Bowl, prefer to see the Eagles last. But I think Rams, Bucks, and Packers are all right there. And I might put the Packers 4th based on some of the deficiencies that we saw pop up offensively for them today in Cleveland.
I don't think there's much separation, or at least as much as we felt going into this. And I'm not one that generally overreacts through a week by week basis, but at the same time, the Rams, of course, were a team in the divisional round last year we saw go to the absolute brink and almost beat the Eagles in a snowy game
Mhm.
with everything on the line. We saw that. So then you felt like the Eagles would at least understand who they were getting. It was the one true test they had in the playoffs last year, all said and done. And they weren't going to just, let the Rams come back in with a much better weather situation for one and be able to dominate or at least stay in a game. And in turn, what actually happened was the Rams, as you pointed out, were really punching them in the mouth, getting it to the point where, the Eagles were pathetic. At one point in time, the Eagles were an absolute pathetic team out there where you really did feel like as if they felt they didn't need to have everything they need to win a game. They could walk in there, take care of business, and walk out. That reality sunk in real quick, apparently at halftime. They started, what I love is it felt like they came out at halftime and they're like, okay, we need to actually start throwing the ball a little bit. We need to actually start being the full, complete offense that we are. We need to be the threat that we know we can be in order to get this thing over the finish line. The defense only allows 7 points the entire second half. The offense scores, just doing the quick math in my head here, that would be 20 points in the second half. And I say 20, even though they scored 26 points. And that's because, of course, 6 points of that was not scored by the offense. It was just scored by a absolute bad beat, being a Jordan Davis blocked field goal that then he himself housed 60 plus yards down the field as time expired. Anyone with Eagles plus 3.5. I was not one with that ticket, thank God. But anyone that did hold that ticket, I do feel very, very sorry for you. You don't want to see a 350-pound man running it down your throat, causing you to lose. That
And
is
if you follow the draft at all, you knew that when he had it in the open field, nobody was catching him because that is not a 350-pound normal human being.
right. So that's that game first half to second half though is championship mentality, why they are the Eagles, right? So I would still put them one, but the Rams are absolutely deserving to be in the conversation, to be part of the class of the NFC. And in that championship or at least winning mentality, Josh, I think we've now seen 2 weeks in a row. The caliber of opponent may not be there, but the Buccaneers had their backs absolutely against the wall, needing to make plays, needing to do things. This is still the NFL. I get that it's the Jets. I get that the week prior was against the Texans. But regardless, for one thing, those are still very respectable defenses each. And two, you got to make the plays when you need to in the crucial times. And the Bucs and Baker Mayfield especially deserve all the flowers in the world because they prove that they understand how to win. That's the most important thing you can have in this league. You just need to know how to win. And that to me speaks more than a lot of other things you can talk about with the team. Like you said, with like the Packers, for instance, where like on paper, they're absolute giants, they're studs, but there's enough deficiencies, especially on the offensive side of the ball, where it's like, are they really going to be able to make the plays they need to win the games when they need to? Because you just saw them on the road against a much inferior team. Talking about the Bucs, you got to play the teams you got to play. They were playing inferior teams, quote unquote, but still good defenses. That's exactly the same situation the Packers found themselves in, and they couldn't put up more than 10 points against those inferior Browns. And even when the rubber was meeting the road, when you could just put the game away, that's actually when they started to fold a little bit and Cleveland started making plays. A team, mind you, that is the Cleveland Browns, who have no clue how to win football games. This is a team that goes out of its way to lose football games. And yet somehow the Packers could not get it done. It's that whole thing where I don't sit there and hate listen or hate watch anything, but I will absolutely enjoy listening to all the individuals who truly were pumping up the Packers as if they were potentially the class of the NFL, not even just the NFC going into this week. And it's like, what do you have to say now? It's one of those things where it felt like you just wanted to ignore those deficiencies. And now it's like, hey, those deficiencies just slapped you right in the face after you really truly believed they were the best. Look, Micah Parsons, unfortunately, can't play right tackle for you and be a dominant one. You might need to figure that out. He can't play left guard for you. You might need to figure that out. You might need to figure out how to do these things because Micah Parsons is just one of 11 on the defensive side of the ball. Now figure out the offense because that needs to do things to win you games. And if you're going against the Browns and can't do it, What are you going to do when you have that rematch against a very motivated Lions? Or what are you going to do when you play the Philadelphia Eagles, the defending champs? What are you going to do when you play a very, very talented, dominant team like the Rams in their own right? Like, there are more questions about the Packers than the others that I personally, I put the Eagles, the Rams, a very minor gap, the Bucks, and then a tier gap before I put the Packers. I think that is truly how I believe that. And I think after the Packers, though, with that said, I think the Lions, we saw what happened week one. I think week one was an absolute liar in that case. The Lions, to me, are very close with the Packers. And I think that division race is going to come down right to the wire. And, oh, by the way, Carson Wentz in that, I mean, they put up 48 points. I'm not going to say Carson Wentz put up 48 points. Really helps when your defense returns multiple scores on their own right. But Carson Wentz looked like a revelation for the Vikings offense under KOC. So the NFC North is an absolute juggernaut when it comes to what that will finish. And I just don't think the Packers are a runaway like it felt like going into this week for a lot of individuals.
And the conversation will feel even different if the Lions beat the Ravens tomorrow night.
Oh,
because I mean that'll shift everything. I'm with you. I do think the Lions have a roster on par with the Packers. I think their roster might even be better than the Packers. And I think the Vikings have a better roster than both teams. And it just comes down to what can they get out of Carson Wentz? Can they get baseline quarterback play like they got today? Because if they can, the Vikings are winning that division, in my opinion. They are such a talented team from top to bottom, and they have great pass rush. They have a great secondary. They have fantastic weapons that's only going to continue to get better next week when they get Jordan Addison back off of suspension. If Carson Wentz can just be last year's Sam Darnold, I think the Vikings take that division. And that to me is going to be such a fun division to watch play out down the stretch. All right, Luca. Well, we are 3 games into this Bills season. Next week, the Bills look ahead and play the New Orleans Saints. The Bills are already a 16.5 point favorite. And honestly, I would lay the points. I think the Bills might just go silly on this team. It's hard to lay 16 in an NFL game because you could see a situation where the Bills are up by 22 late and they got Trubisky in and the backups and the Saints go down and get a cheap touchdown. But ultimately, I think this is a Bills team that I think maybe kind of like week 1 to week 2 where they won, but the defense is not feeling great about itself. I think they're going to look to take out some frustration on the Saints the same way they did the Jets. They're also coming off of a long rest. I think this offense is, still looking to, have its way with it. I felt like they're having their way with the Dolphins till the second half when they kind of hit the wall. So I'm excited to see that. But big week ahead for you and I. We'll be back on Wednesday with Bills Chat Live at 7 p.m., breaking down all things Saints and hopefully another Ravens loss and looking ahead to a massive Ravens versus Chiefs game in week 4. And then we will be on Sunday, potentially Saints halftime show. This is the 1 week. I don't know if we're going to have Bills Saints halftime. It really depends on a scheduling conflict I have. But either way, Luca and I will be back Sunday night / Monday morning, everywhere you can get your podcast, YouTube, Spotify, Apple, to get all Bills Saints post game talk. Obviously, we'll be all over Ravens Chiefs, that Colts Rams game. Luca, it's getting fun. It no longer feels like football just started. It feels like we're into the thick of it.
Absolutely. We're now in the weeds. I mean, you're truly in it though, Josh, when you start balancing bye weeks. Who's on a bye next week? Because week 4 is the start of all of that fun. And I mean, looking ahead and stuff like that. Boy, did you realize that Monday night is once again a double header next week? And do you want to know what that double header is? If you weren't aware, it's quite the doozy. I'm just going to
because we get Lions and Ravens this week. Are they going to keep 2 strong weeks in a row? They are not.
Boy, they won't. That 7:15 kickoff. If you love good football, is Jets visiting the Dolphins. Oh baby, Tyrod versus Tua.
Hide the women and children.
And then 8:15 is Bengals at Broncos. I mean, Jake Browning versus Bo Nix in his sophomore slump season. It feels like. They really picked a winner. But
an AFC East pillow fight and a Broncos blowout. What a
But Sunday night, I mean, the marquee matchup. There's some good ones. I'm not trying to drag this out, but there's some good week 4 matchups. You got Eagles at Bucks, for instance.
Yeah.
That's an absolute
Woo.
banger. Ravens, Chiefs, of course. Sunday night, though, is absolutely game number 1, marquee, been circled since 3 days before the season kicked off. You get Packers
Yeah.
going to Jerry World on Sunday Night Football. Oh, I cannot wait to watch that one. Please bet over 2.5 sacks for Micah Parsons. That will hit probably by the second quarter. This is not betting advice, but also, have fun with it because that is must-watch television.
Rams, Colts, Eagles, Bucks,
Yeah.
Ravens, Chiefs. What a Sunday. That's a great Sunday. All right, Luka, we'll be back next Sunday to record the next edition of Bills Chat. I do not expect the Bills to have a difficult time with the Saints. We'll get into that on Wednesday. We will talk to you next time on Bills Chat.